formalità degli spazi di tutti.
مساحة عامة غير رسمية.
Neformales viešasis erdves.
Uformelle offentlige rom.
Epävirallinen julkinen tila.
A simple piece of paper folded into a heart. In that small, quiet gesture, I find something that feels profound, a moment of transformation. Taking something plain, something empty, like this piece of paper, like an unmarked street or an empty square, and turning it into something beautiful, useful, fulfilling. To understand about public spaces, they can be more than what they first seem, and often they are what we make of them.
Today we are here in Matera for the 19th time, and we are all of these people for the Silent Book Club, which is a book club that promotes the reading in the city.
L'ha detto lui, promuoviamo la lettura.
This is a public space which is regenerated since 1 year, and we try to live this place up a little bit.
In Matera, they call it vasca, the word for swimming laps, but here it's used to describe something a little different. Instead of water, it's the streets of this ancient city. People walk back and forth as if they're swimming through the stones, following the rhythm of the city one step at a time. We are all interconnected, moving back and forth like swimming laps, walking the streets or swinging on swings. Swings meant to stay still, yet still we find a way to make them move. You can't stop the flow of life. Everything in the world is movement. So let's keep going.
Venice is a very, very difficult city to work. There is no resident, there is no people living here. The urban pattern of the common space is very, very poor. Common space where the people play together or do everything together in the public space we call campi. The only one public structure that work here is the university. From May to 2 weeks ago, one important informal public space that was the kiosque of our university that was occupied for protest for the Free Palestine, and this is maybe the main example of informal public space where the people did something for the people with the people.
I don't think people appreciate Novogorica much because people complain that there's not much happening here and it's very small, but for me, I like it because it's very small, clean, green, quiet, safe, and I value all these things. You can feel that Gorica and Novogorica are very different because Gorica is older, so you feel the architecture is older in Novogorica, and also the population is drastically different. I don't know how to say, it's like the ring where two sides meet up and they join together in some projects. Next year, Novogorica and Gorica are going to be hosting the European Capital of Culture, and there's going to be a lot of activities.
In Slovenia, nature isn't just something we admire. It's something we move with. The coastline, the rivers, the lakes. Each step along these waters is a quiet dance between man and nature, where movement becomes gentle and care becomes mutual. Here, we nurture the land, and in return, it nurtures us. It's a delicate balance, a rhythm we share with the earth as we move through it, and it moves with us. where the dance continues, even in the city. A square that cools the air on the hottest days.
So this is the main square or let's say one of the main squares in Ljubljana.
A simple solution to the heat, yet a reminder of something deeper. How we all move together, no matter where we are. As I continued my journey, the need for relief from the heat became even more apparent. The informality of public life takes over. A striking piece of art and history nestled in the shadow of the largest post office in the world. The grand, imposing buildings around it may suggest control and order, but in this moment, the people take ownership. They move freely, even in the most serious of spaces. It's a symbol of the resilience of public spaces in post-communist cities, a reminder of how public spaces, even when neglected, are never truly abandoned. In this subtle dance between water and people, between formality and informality, you feel the true spirit of public life. A place not just built for us, but shaped by how we choose to use it.
When you talked previously about this Soviet footprint on our public spaces, it's really resonated with things about which I think lately. It is that we're still quite close to our private spaces, because in Soviet times there was the Soviet state tried collective, like you couldn't have a private yard, sometimes you couldn't even have a private kitchen or a private bathroom, and like collective spaces, and when people decide to use something in common, but as this was made with a force in the past, now even after 30 years, the society is quite traumatized about it, and it's really hard to make citizens in general to start believe that they can do something collectively, or that they should care about like the yard of their collective estate.
In Riga, public spaces are alive with a sense of informality, where people naturally take ownership of their surroundings. The city's streets, parks, and riversides become fluid extensions of everyday's life, filled with moments of celebration, creativity, and connection. Here, the lines between public and personal fade, creating a dynamic urban landscape where anything can happen.
Somehow when I think about Užupis, there is an aspect of like artist and art, but I think more about like economy. During the Soviet era, all the money from the state, from the city, were driven toward building these new Soviet districts, and they were like the best place to live. But we are quite far from the city center, and this part, Old Town, and especially Užupis, was totally forgotten by the city. A bit down the river, a new faculty of arts was built in the late Soviet times, and then these art students, they needed somewhere to live, and here was a very cheap district, so we started living and gathering here, and many other like artists, sculptors, actors started living in Užupis because it was right near the city center, and it was cheap too. I thought about this place. For me, it's probably the most informal place in Vilnius because there are like some informal rules about it that in Lithuania you can't just drink alcohol outside. It's forbidden, like already almost 15 years, I guess. But people freely drink here every day. It has its like soul, which somehow police obey too. And one of the most likable for me like places with informal rules, a beach volleyball playground, I guess we can call it like that, near the White Bridge, Baltasis Tiltas. Yeah, and so it was like created maybe 4 years ago, and there are formal rules written on the plate that no company can play for longer than 2 hours on one court. But practically that means that only like 24 people can play there, like very, very small amount. And practically people developed their own set of rules, how they manage to divide the space between volleyball players. So now the rules are beach volleyball is played in pairs. So when a pair comes to a certain court, there are like six of them. You ask how many other pairs are in line, and each pair plays 2 matches. So it's like, I don't know, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, but totally not 2 hours. And then after that, when you play 2 matches, you change and you go to the end of the queue.
After crossing the Baltic Sea, movement starts to change. In Tallinn, I board a ferry and the landscape shifts once more. Public transport in Helsinki isn't just about getting from point A to point B. It's about efficiency, structure, and control. Below, the labyrinth of tunnels and platforms hums with a quiet, utopian simplicity. In this underground world, getting lost is almost impossible.
This place is Audi Library, like a public library. There's a lot of space to study or play instruments or hang with your friends, or okay, if you would have kids, you can bring your kids there to play. There's like a playground there inside for the kids. Mm-hmm. So it's a nice new public space in Helsinki, and I think they have been nailing it because people seem to be enjoying it, even if we don't now currently see actually from So Kesäpuisto, like next to Oodi. It was first time that I was walking through it, and yeah, it was interesting. So they had a lot of plants from the countryside. So it looked at you on the countryside, and then it had a lot of playful things for kids, like this sand and then the water pump. That was funny that the kids were playing on this kind of muddy.
But it looked
sand.
like underdeveloped, right?
Yeah, so it was like totally new park in a well-designed space, public space, and then they had created this fake summer park there, which looked underdeveloped. Kids were playing there more happily because it was more like that you are in a forest or in some natural beach. So that made probably the people to play there because they were not worried that they break something or something is wrong if they do something which is not formal. Yeah.
It's more like formality masking.
Yeah, maybe they do it like intentionally, that they know already, I don't know, some themes how the people misuse the spaces and they want it to happen. They give people this kind of space to explore the formal space.
I head further north than I've ever been, with only one goal, northern Norway. But I had no idea how to get there, until I did. Crossing the Arctic Circle felt like entering a new world. Nature here isn't just around you. It takes over and you live with it, not just in it. In Rovaniemi, I felt that quiet magic, a place where life and landscape flow together. Haparanda felt emptier, like a still frame from a film. Its silence giving me space to breathe. Then in Luleå, I rode through the Swedish wilderness with a local, exploring UNESCO sites, and everything came together. These cities were the threads that connected it all. I disconnected from the world I knew and realized this right here is my reality, and it's beautiful. The ride through the Arctic Circle, through the wilderness, felt like the culmination of everything I'd been seeking, as if I had discovered all the answers. And yet, in that moment, I felt smaller than ever, small against the vastness of the world. But somehow that made me happier, happier than I could have imagined. I'm heading to Narvik, ready to take the final step. And the journey feels full, as if I already found what I was looking for. Guys, do we get a lift from? And I finally arrived in Lofoten. I'm reminded how public spaces can stretch beyond urban boundaries. The landscapes are the public spaces here. The beaches, the mountains. They invite you to stop and explore at will. There are no fences, no restrictions, just open landscapes where public space is defined by your willingness to engage with the land. In these, let's say, remote places, because they are full of tourists, the informality is immediate. It's not just a choice, it's a necessity. People hitchhike, they cross roads, they pause along the way, finding places to rest, to share, to be. Public space is vast and ungoverned. Public space is vast and it's raw and it's unfiltered. The space doesn't belong to anyone. It belongs to everyone who's willing to experience it.
We are here in Trondheim, that used to be the capital of Vikings. I moved here a year and a half ago, and I was surprised how the public spaces are used by the communities as spaces to connect, where people can share not only their responsibilities of taking care of them, but also their time. Community work and public spaces here are in a completely symbiotic relationship, and people take joy by doing something that serves something bigger than themselves. Everyone here can access and use those spaces, so no one actually feel the need to occupy and give the informal nods to public spaces.
Yet another rainbow appears, and with it I'm reminded, public space is never truly finished. It's a constant work in progress, shaped by all of us.